Hello everybody, the Fuzz is back, and what do we have? A balance patch! Good times, right? So I'm gonna go over that, plus the what are we gonna call it? The developer's custom card contest or something like that? We'll just go with that. So starting with the balance patch, we got 6 card changes. It would appear that, yes, there's one from every aspect. Very interesting, so let's get right into it. Mr. Temple Guard has his speed reduced to 1. This has been suggested. This was one of the suggestions. Among the others was make his attack 2. It depends on the flavor you want. By reducing his speed, you're basically making him a very tough beat stick. Like, against the control deck, he's just as dangerous. Him having less speed doesn't really help. But against non-control decks, they'll be better able to deal with it because the Temple Guard won't just be able to free kill their stuff. It might be a 3-1 shielded, but if it can't attack anything, then that doesn't really help that much. And zombies will be able to trade into him with zombie legionnaires, which is quite helpful. So, glad it was nerfed. Temple Guard was definitely a little bit too high on the power level for a 2-drop. So, we'll see just how much this affects soldiers and really any aggressive deck that played these guys. Mostly the various types of soldiers. Advanced Darius has his cooldown increased to 4, as it should always have been. Along with Advanced Zash, both of those hero powers at 4 cooldown seems pretty reasonable. The fact that they left him at 3 was kind of weird, because this ability every 3 turns was definitely ridiculous. So, seeing this at 4 seems good to me, seems fair. Hopefully more balanced changes like this one. Moonlight Patrol, speed reduced to 2 from 3. I did not expect this one. In a sense, it does make it makes sense because Moonlight was one of the best 3-drops in the game with good stat line and flying and the ability to pump up and trade up. Moonlight Patrol was pretty badass. Now it's still pretty good, but the fact that it doesn't have 3 speed means it's not going to be as oppressive as before, so seems fair. I'm gonna try to not to overuse that phrase, but hey, when it's appropriate. Forced Labor is now 4 mana. Wow, that's pretty rough, man. I don't play enough of these decks to know whether this is gonna be a problem. I think for Red Demons, that's gonna make the card impossible to use, which means Red Demons are just gonna fall apart because they have no reason to go into red if they're not using this, because it being 1 turn late is a problem. So maybe I'll try it out, but it seems unlikely. As for Red Soldiers, which is the deck that most prominently featured this card, we're gonna have to see. Paying that 1 extra mana and, you know, having to wait 1 extra turn, that definitely bites. It's still decent value, but not nearly as good as it was before. So, I mean, it's probably good that they made this change, because playing this on turn 4 and then following up with like a massive assault, that was a little bit ridiculous, the amount of damage you could do. Or even with just following up with a bunch more creatures. If you had enough creatures on the board so that the slave tag didn't matter, it was basically 3 mana, summon 3 2/3s, which was a little bit ridiculous. So, definitely agree that there should have been a change. I guess you had to increase the mana, right? Because what else were you going to do? If you're going to make it summon 2 Tortured Orcs, the card would probably just suck. Yeah, alright. I still think Forced Labor might see play in the future if there is, like, maybe some more shenanigans with slaves. This is still a pretty good value card. But we'll see. It's a good thing that the Red Soldiers are going to be less dominant, because it could get out of control. And even Red Demons could get pretty nasty with this card. Mistress of Shadows no longer draws you a card when you play her. That seems completely good for me, because the card was absolutely insane for how much value she generated against aggressive decks. I mean, it was basically a Vanguard that cast Assassinate. Well, you didn't choose the target, but still. And drew you a card. So, it's a Vanguard, which is already a good stat line, that gets you a card and kills an enemy card. So, it's like a +2 on this card. Yeah, you might have to take like 3 damage or something, but who cares? So, good to see it. It is going to make it almost strictly a card against aggressive decks, because against control decks, well, It's just a Vanguard, and that your opponent gets to use for 1 turn. It's still gonna be nice with Vampires, because killing your own creature is more difficult than killing an enemy creature. No, not that much more difficult, but you get the idea. So, yeah, that's alright. I mean, if you're struggling with aggro as a control deck, Mistress will still be useful for you, because in that case, you didn't really need the card draw so much, since if you're playing Mistress, you're probably just gonna outvalue them anyway, since you get a 3/3 on the board, and you kill their 2-drop, probably. So, yeah. That seems completely fine to me. Tombs of the Damned now will no longer produce a zombie when it leaves the field. So the idea was that because it generated a zombie when you lost the tombs, it made people want to not remove it, since, well, they got another zombie, so maybe just leave it there and then they'll get one less zombie. But the other reason why this is important is when you had tombs on the board, you could just play a second tombs and get a zombie for the first one leaving the board, and get a second zombie for the one that's coming in. So basically, if you had a tombs on the board and you knew your opponent could not remove it, you could just play a second tombs and instantly generate 2 extra zombie legionnaires. Kind of like a forced labor style card. So, yeah. So that's a bigger nerf than it seems. But I imagine it's still going to be a good card for zombies, because it doesn't get removed that much anyways. I mean, unless you're up against nature. Like, Ray of Righteousness hitting this is not really a problem for you, because you already got your zombie. But I guess it's reasonable. I guess it shouldn't be, like, removal resistant, right? So I think it's a completely fine change. So, all around good changes. However, I gotta ask, where is Diogen? Right? Why is Diogen not on this list? Diogen is clearly overpowered. I think everybody would agree with that. Is there anybody who doesn't think so? And yet, it wasn't hit. Diogen is a big card in a variety of decks, with Hermelian, with, like, I've seen it with Advanced Neva. Really, any deck that runs Nature or an Order, or if you just run Trigon, you're probably running Diogen just because of the ridiculous value he provides for just a 2-mana card, and that can be instilled. So, very surprising. I have a feeling we have not seen the last of this. Diogen is going to get hit by the hammer sooner or later, because it's just way too good. And it's especially bad because he's like an heroic card as well. So, yeah. Oh, wait. No, wait. Hang on a second. He's not heroic. I was just kidding. He's just epic. My mistake. But it's still, you don't want epic cards to be like super value powerful, because then it kind of feels like, well, I can't just craft 4 epic cards, so I'm just doing worse than my opponents automatically. So Diogen's got to get hit for sure. Trigon, maybe, but I will say, as per tradition, all the changes are good. The game is going to be better as a result. Well, it does mean that, I guess, just that makes Diogen seem even better, since he now looks more powerful compared to these other cards. So, you know, we'll hold on this. The game is better. But I will say, at least, that the changes are all good. Well done, devs, as always. But seriously, no Diogen? You guys really don't think he's overpowered? I don't know. Anyways, the second part of the video, the developers custom card contest. I've linked it in the description. Basically, the developers are gonna put up 1 card every, I don't know how often, I assume like every 2 weeks or something, and they're gonna be accepting submissions for the best way to redesign it, very much like we did our own custom card contest, but they will be specifically centered around cards. Like this time it'll be Vegetation Blockade, and the idea is just to make it better in some way. So they will just take the most interesting suggestions and, I guess, implement whichever one they think is the coolest. So I will personally be submitting a suggestion for sure. I'll put it in the thread. Hopefully we can come up with something. So first of all, why is Vegetation Blockade such trash, right? So it's a 2-mana curse. It's a 2-mana redraw curse, very similar to Curse of Risha and like Wall of Fire and whatever. So the problem is, it's just a 2-mana slightly annoy your opponent, right? Because, I mean, maybe at best, it'll stop them from attacking for 1 turn. Maybe it'll stop them from, or they'll attack with 1 less creature. But I mean, it's a 2-mana redraw otherwise. That's just not good enough. So it needs to do something better. I think it's meant to be a control card, more or less. It's supposed to help you dealing with aggro. So in that case, I would probably aim for it being a curse that stays on the board. And it could be something like deals 1 damage to a creature that attacks every turn. I don't know, something like that. It's supposed to make attacking more difficult, basically. That's the idea. So, yeah, that would be a control card. Now, of course, you want to make sure that, you know, stacking multiple of these doesn't become stupid. Because, like doesn't prevent attacking at all. Just keep that in mind. So, I'm looking forward to seeing these suggestions. I'm not going to do a video covering them. But still, you'll see my suggestion. But anyways, the reason I'm glad about this is because this is a clear effort of the developers to reach out to the community and ask for our input, just like they did with that poll regarding the 40 life win condition. This is great! I will say, this should have happened like a year ago, because the community is a terrific resource for any game, because there's only so much developers can. You got like 8 developers, or however many of them there are, versus like a couple hundred players who are constantly playing, testing, checking the meta, checking the balance, doing all that. Your players will always be smarter than you. And this goes out to every developer everywhere. Your players are always better than you, no matter what you think. So, I'm glad to see that. I want to see more of this kind of thing, more input from the community. Certainly from our more esteemed players like the members of Shriney and the various Masters winners, plus the regulars that are always active. You guys can come up with something pretty good. I do want to see Vegetation Blockade become playable, or at least like not horrific. And as I said, I think some kind of a control defensive spell similar to the old Angelic Might is what I'm thinking. Although not exactly like Angelic Might. We don't want like too many stall cards, because then we're gonna get more stall decks basically. So anyways, those are my 2 cents. Let me know what you think. What would your suggestions be? I mean, put them in the forum, obviously. Don't put them in the comments. We want everybody to see them. And I'll be thinking about this, and I'll see if I can come up with an interesting one. All right. Take it easy.